My business, well,
Yeah.
my name is Michael King, and
Okay.
my business is Pilates.
Oh, nice.
But it's MK Pilates. I go under my own name, MK Pilates. We worked under the Pilates Institute for many years in the UK, but
Mhm.
now since 2008, funny enough, we've been working as MK Pilates.
Okay. Nice. And then what did Pilates Institute do? Is it more like just teacher training programs, things along those lines?
Yeah, we're just still doing teacher training program. It was, no, we set up in 97, 98 in London, and we became the first organization to work with government as far as accredited training courses.
Okay.
That was a big thing. 2002, we became the first one to with government standards, and it was a whole new world because then suddenly we're having people coming in and external verifying us and how we were teaching, and it was really good actually. It's not slightly
Yes.
scary. But then in 2008, we decided to break away from that and start our own company, and that's when we set up as MK Pilates.
Okay. Nice. You don't have to get too personal, but when people say that they break away, is it like tearing a band off breakaway, or is it like a Godspeed breakaway?
No, it was a really bad breakup.
Was it? Yeah.
We merged with the company stopped paying us. It was just disaster. It was hell.
Oh,
And so I always try to play it down until, you know,
yes.
maybe I have a glass or two of red wine, and then I'll go, you won't
Then
believe how bad it was. No, it was bad. It was a bad time.
yeah, and we get so good at putting that game face on, right? We're like, oh, well, we went our separate ways. We had a different vision. Yeah, right.
No, it was, but it was, the change is sometimes really difficult to deal with at the time, but, what it led on to, it's like when I injured myself dancing, I thought it was the end of the world. When I was told that I wouldn't dance, I was saying, oh, life is over. But then
Right.
it took me on to the next stage. So things just keep going on to something different. And it might seem very frustrating at the time, but when looking back on it, it was actually a really good positive point of that we needed to do and
Oh,
have more
for
freedom in what
sure.
we're doing.
Yeah, Roxy just came on. Hi, Roxy. We just finished talking about how amazing you are.
She is amazing.
But Michael, you say that, and it's so true. Like sometimes we go kicking and screaming into those moments when life is trying to change direction on us.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're going through really strange times. I try and be really positive. There's so much stress of what we're dealing with on a day. We just went into lockdown here I'm in Athens in Greece, and we just
Okay.
went yesterday morning, went into full lockdown, so everything's closed, restaurants, gyms, studios, everything. And
Wow.
when we came out of that, we were in lockdown, then we came out of it. So we're dealing with so much at the moment. I think you have to put on a positive, even what you're screaming inside, especially when you're teaching people, when you've got clients who come in
Yes.
stressed. The last thing they want
Yes.
to go leave is be more stressed. But I
Right.
think, we do put on a front sometimes, which is what we feel that people is going to be best either for the clients or whoever's listening to the stories.
Right. And with a lot of the racial tension that we see happening in North America and worldwide in so many different ways, the phrase that keeps coming up is like just show up, keep showing up. And for good or for bad, if I talk about it from the good side right now, when we can do that, we are an encouragement to others, we're encouragement to other teachers. We can show that there is some resilience there and some ways to get through it. And yeah, I think that like what you're saying there is so true. Like there's something that can be said for being able to put that game face on, be a positive outlook, and just kind of be a light or a beacon for others when everyone's feeling the same level of uncertainty with everything, right? So
Yeah, when this happened, we were in the UK, and we were in the UK for about 3 months. And when this first happened, and I thought everything was cancelled for the year, and we were one of the fuddy-duddy companies that said we'll never do anything online ever. And so when we started thinking about, and the beginning, it was disaster. I've never seen so many bedroom ceilings in my whole life. That's all I was seeing was just bedroom ceilings. And I was
right.
like, I thought
I
this
can't
is
do this.
first
Right.
week, for the first week, I thought, this is hell. I'm never going to survive it. But then over time, we've adapted and we've
Yeah.
learned Zoom, and they keep updating Zoom, but we keep learning it, and
Right.
and all the other mediums. And I think now I see a lot of people going on about, I hate Zoom, we need live. I said, yeah, live is best, but if this is the only thing we can do, then let's make it the best it can be. Let's try and now we bought big TVs and put them on a stand, and I can see everyone in the class, and it's really
Yes.
great. It's really good. And then we got onto education, which again is a hot subject online.
Yes.
But
Right.
we've had people from Mexico, from South Africa, from everywhere joining us, and it's
Right.
really worked in a different way.
In a
Without
different
doubt,
way.
it's different.
Yes.
But let's just have word connecting. It's when you're sharing information, whatever it is, it can be done in many different ways. And so
Yes.
it's been challenging and has been stressful, but it doesn't know, we don't know what the end of this is going to be. So it's just adapting and making sure that we can stay sane while we're going through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, you've just from the article that I read, and you've traveled the globe, you've taught all over the place. Isn't it fascinating that you're still broadening your scope, but doing it digitally now?
Yeah, totally.
You
And
know?
yeah, no,
And,
we would, sometimes I felt like a missionary going into places where I remember
I
years
actually,
ago.
yes, I was gonna say you're like a Plies evangelist. I literally had written that down. Like,
But I remember years ago we first went to Korea, and this person was so excited they were showing me around this club, and I saw this class, and there was the teacher was hitting two sticks together really fast. I said, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. What is that?" And they went, "It's Pilates." I went, "Okay." I said, "We've never seen this before," But it's hard now. Pilates is everywhere. We spent many years in Russia, going to Siberia, traveling right into the depths of Russia and everywhere from Novosibirsk, which is the middle of Siberia. The ice hockey team's got Pilates there, so it's everywhere. And it's sad that Joseph Pilates didn't get to see that his dream was for it to be around the world, but it really is. But of course, it changes depending on who takes it into that country. Sometimes it's more mat based, sometimes it's more apparatus. It's really different depending on who first goes in and becomes established with it.
exactly right. Have you seen where someone has brought it in one way and someone's come after and taken it by storm and shifted the focus?
Absolutely. It's,
Yeah.
Turkey, for example, our neighbors, Turkey, when I first started going down in Turkey, back in the early 2000, there was only one teacher teaching there that was quite well established, but she had a very fixed system, and there were only 20 movements. I was like, 20 movements? This is kind of strange. And so, you kind of find these stories out there that have, and then sometimes they weren't allowed to change things, and it's like, well, they always change things. I spent my life changing things. So it has really, it has been very different in some countries because of the influence. And then sometimes because of that country, we're in Iran and we have a Pilates school in Iran, and there it's very difficult to get the education. We had to change all the manuals for just females and all the manuals for just males. So that was a whole different challenge.
Yeah, right.
So
Fascinating.
Well, challenging is the way I look at it sometimes.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm on the outside, so it's fascinating for me because I'm not putting the work in, right? So,
language changes, food changes, people are people at the end of the day. And I love it when we go to Russia, they say, "Oh, it's Russia, it's different here." I say, "No, it's not. It's not. People are the same." You might have a little cultural difference, but it's the same. Turkey's the same. People are people, and bodies are bodies. And yes, they might be genetically slightly different in Japan or wherever, but we're still dealing with a lot of postural issues and a lot of problems with how people are moving these days or not moving. So I think that's what we have to keep remembering is they are people, and wherever they are, whatever they're doing, whatever they're eating, they're still moving their bodies, and that's what we look at.
So from that perspective, do you still do applies for men class or applies for women class or applies for athletes? Do you have specialties within it that you would teach from time to time?
Sometimes, but I think a good teacher adapts. I remember in London, when we had our studio in London, we had Saturday morning was husband's morning. The wives would come in the week and they would send their husbands in on Saturday morning. And literally women were banned for 2 hours every Saturday morning.
Oh, really?
And it was funny. And it wasn't like, official. It just became that way.
Yes.
And it was funny because, the wives would say, "Oh, my husband's coming this weekend. He's got a shoulder problem. He's got a neck problem." And of course, the husband would come and say, "Anything I need to know?" And they go, "No, I'm fine." So okay, well, it's exactly what your wife said. But no, I think specialties sometimes, if I see specialties, if I go teach dancers, I would say that's different. If I go into Turkey for the basketball team, that's different. That's something which is very specific. But again, here in the studio, we have mix. We have, guys coming in, ladies coming in, girls coming in. It's all mixed as a studio. Of course, what we're doing is individual. So what I might give the guy is something very different to what I might give, you know, the grandmother on the other side of the room type of thing, although often she's in better shape than the guy is.
I see that too.
So, you know, I think you teach to the body. And, you know, one of my philosophies is always the most important thing is the client, not the movements. You know, if you make the movements more important than the client, you have to look at the client, see what they need, and then adapt that. And I think that's where we kind of lose. If it becomes just about the movement without looking at the client, then I think sometimes you miss it. Whoever the client is, male or female or young or old, it doesn't matter.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's, you know, I was taught in other contexts, like memorize nothing, understand everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, coming back to that place of I can just go by rote memory and give you the classical order and repertoire, or I can look at the body in front of me and say, okay, well, we can't do that. We do need to do that. We maybe should spend some more time on this. Maybe we should omit this and go from there, right?
Yeah, I don't really use the C word. It's kind of a bit of a bane in my life, because I think what we've got in the industry now is we've separated, which we should never have separated. You know, I've become a classical teacher, and I see it advertised all the time. I'm looking for classical teachers. I'm like, well, what is that? You know, you should all know the classical repertoire. If you want to call it that, we would call it traditional. You should all know that. But, you know, really, I've spent the last 40 odd years adapting, depending who comes into my studio. Of course, I'm working towards those traditional movements. Mm-hmm. But I think what we've got now is very branded. You know, people are measured by the machine, I say. You know, I'm a start teacher, I'm a balanced body teacher. It doesn't matter what you are. It's a Pilates teacher. It doesn't matter who you train with. What you should know is you should know the traditional repertoire. But, you know, and I think you have to learn to adapt. That's what I've been doing forever.
Of course.
Working in specific, you know, but of course the goal is to work towards those original movements. That's what we're all doing. So I don't like separating the industry by saying classical or contemporary. I think it's really been hard on us because it's made us, we've got so much separatism. I mean, look at here on the news. I wasn't going to mention the election, but it's, it's 24 hours on our TV here.
Yes.
And we're so separated. And in this method, we shouldn't be. Even with the clients, we should be separated. You know, all of us are teaching people to move.
Yes.
And I think it doesn't matter what you want to call yourself, but don't separate us. You know, we are one industry. We are one method.
Yes. One industry, one method.
Yeah, well, totally. So don't say the C word again. Don't say the C word.
Okay. Yeah, no, I strongly believe that. So what do you say then to the person who does a weekend class and just learns the mat and just learns some newfangled thing and calls it Pilates? Like, what is your response to that?
Well, listen, these people are not evil. They're not bad. They haven't gone off and, you know, killed somebody. I mean, it's just they only know so much. You know, after all this time, I make sure every year I do some training. You know, I want to learn, whether it be learning about fascia or maybe learning about something. I mean, at the moment, you know, our big thing is we're looking at working with cancer. I went through stage 3 cancer myself a few years ago, 7 years ago. Yeah. At that time, I got really interested in how it changes the body. So I think, you know, we're all learning all the time. And somebody that's in a short course, we have them in UK, we have them here in Greece. We have very short courses. And I'm sure you've seen it in the US, you don't even have to show up, you can do it online. Yes. You know, it's just the start of it. It's the tip of the iceberg. You know, last week I was in Bulgaria and we had suddenly Pilates took off about a year ago. Crazy. People were buying the machines and buying the equipment, the apparatus, but not done the training. They opened the studios with no training and the studios got full. Yeah. So then they start coming for the training. But, you know, it's almost like backwards. It's like, okay, congratulations on having a successful studio. What are you doing? You know, and of course what they learned was from YouTube, from books. You know, they hadn't really trained. Now, again, you know, my job as an educator is try and turn that around and say, look, let's go back to what this should be. And it's sometimes difficult because if they're doing things they've seen on YouTube, it's sometimes not what the client needs. So it is difficult. I mean, training's ongoing. You know, we all need to learn. And if you've only done 2 days, you're really just starting. But it's difficult if they become successful. You know, a great friend of mine,
right? Yes.
Lawrence Biscontini, who's absolutely amazing. He has a house here in Mykonos in Greece, and we had him as a guest. And he said, look, there's those fantastic people on Instagram who've never done a training course, and they look stunning. they're the entertainers. And then you've got the educators who've done every course on the planet, but they're not that busy. He said, what we kind of have to be is a mixture between the two. I think he called it an edutainer. Where you have to know what you're doing, but you have to look good. You have to be the part, as much as you can be.
Right.
And I think, there's all types of teachers out there now. There's another great person, Glenn Withers, who runs an organization in the UK for physiotherapists or physical therapists, we call them. He wrote an amazing article saying that your background changes how you teach this method. And it doesn't matter if you're a physical therapist, if you're a dancer, if you're from fitness, you all teach like differently. No one's right. It's just different.
Yes.
Because they're coming at it with a different experience. So I think
lens.
that's what we have to hang on to, is that we are so individual. We want you to be an amazing Pilates teacher and the person next to you be a Pilates teacher, but you might have your own take on it.
Absolutely.
And I was lucky enough, back in the 80s, I was in Houston for 10 years. I ran Houston Ballet's program, and then I was in LA for 5 years. So I did 15 years in the US, so I definitely know the US market. I was lucky enough to go to New York. Houston Ballet sent me up to New York. I took class with Corolla. I took class with Romana. I took sessions, and I got to see how even back then it was so different. This was early 80s. And
really?
Corolla and Romana were very close to each other, but I remember the teacher at Corolla saying, "Don't tell Corolla you're going to Romana," things were different. It wasn't.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't.
And now I'm not that familiar with the lineage. So is Corolla a dancer as well? Like Romana's a dancer in background. Was Corolla as well?
No, Corolla was a contortionist.
Okay.
She was. I remember she was very short, and she used to wear just a leotard. And I don't know what age she was when I was going there, but it was not young. And I remember her. She wore bare legs, and she had the leotard on. But back then. It was kind of known. If you wanted to learn the chair, you went to Cathy Grant. If you wanted to reformer, you went to Romana. And Corolla was kind of the trapeze table, the Cadillac. So,
and that was like their niches, or that was just like what they became known for?
This is what became known for. I mean, they all had every piece of equipment, but when there wasn't official trainings courses, I mean, the only way you could learn was going to the studios.
Yes.
And often you would never even consider teaching Pilates unless you've been a client for at least a year in many studios.
Right.
And so when all this took off in around 2000 and suddenly everybody wanted to be a Pilates teacher, suddenly we were accommodating people to have training courses. But we were having people show up on our training courses that had never done Pilates. So it's almost like they were learning Pilates and learning to teach, but the fitness clubs were sending them to us to teach it.
Yeah.
So again, it was a bit of a backward situation. I mean, today's different. Most of the people coming to us are clients who are doing career changes. They've been going to Pilates.
Yes.
They know the method. So it's a much different thing today than it was back then when suddenly everything exploded.
Yes.
Before that, you had to be kind.
Oh yeah, no, it's funny. Like it's just on a different topic altogether. But like Michael, you're saying that reminds me of the difference between my brother and I, who's like 18 months younger than me. I wanted to get my motorcycle license, so I researched it for 10 years and found courses and did these things and just researched it. Finally found a course, did the course. My brother goes out and bought a motorcycle and then looked for insurance and then found a course. And there's different types of people, right? Some people who are like entrepreneurs who build their parachute after they jump out of the plane, and then others who research it to the nines and then never actually do it.
No. I mean, and that's what's great. It's not a bad thing. It's great we have diversity. I love taking class. It was funny. Here at Christmas last year, our heating broke down, and I'm too old to be cold. So we checked into the Hilton. I got enough points. Back then when we were traveling, I got enough points to check into the Hilton. Anyway, the Hilton had a Pilates studio. I said, oh, fantastic. And there was a mat class starting the next morning. So I'll go take mat. I haven't taken it for a while. Anyway, walked in, and I was definitely the youngest person in the room by at least 20 years. I mean, it was definitely a hardcore group. In fact, one of the ladies said to me, this is Pilates. And I went, yes, I do. Thank you. And anyway, it was really great. I took class. I got to be a student, and it was just great to be in a class. And that's how it should be. But the teacher was different. Okay. I mean, I found afterwards she was trained by Bassey, which is great. Ryle, I've known for years. It's a great system. But there were differences. But it was the differences that I love. And I think that's what we get so hooked on, is that you have to do it a certain way. music, no music, all those silly rules, which, you know, heavy breathing, no heavy breathing. I'm like, come on, you know, let's enjoy that.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but like that's just resonated with me so much. It's the differences that we love.
Totally.
That's,
And even,
we're not
even with the apparatus,
taught that way, right? Like,
yeah,
you know,
I mean, years ago, there was a great convention. It's now no longer in existence, but it was in San Francisco. It's Body, Mind, Spirit.
okay.
And there was a session there where we took a reformer from each of the organizations, the companies.
Okay.
We tried the same movements on each reformer.
Yes.
And it was amazing how the movements changed on each piece. And you know, even there, but it wasn't bad. It was just different. You know, so you know, when people always say to me, "What's your favorite company for apparatus?" I always go, "Well, whatever's in front of me." You know, but I need to learn that. I need to know the differences.
Yes.
You know, don't get hooked on it has to be a certain machine. It doesn't have to be anything. Your knowledge as a teacher is what makes this method, not the machine.
Yes.
And that's what the people in Bulgaria, I said, why do you spend thousands on these machines and then get trained afterwards? It doesn't make sense. But they thought if they bought the most expensive machines, that they would know everything and it would be better, that it would help their teaching. I said, you know, the machine does not help your teaching. You know, yes, it's a tool, like anything, like an artist or like a chef, but it's not what makes it. What makes it is you and your knowledge. And that's what is so important. Rather than get hooked on the labels, you know.
Yes,
I'm
absolutely.
this teacher, I'm that teacher.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you get a high master from the comment section? How did you end up being this authority on teaching and traveling and being the person that people reach out to for these teacher training? Because there's a lot of people out there who are passionate about teaching individuals, but aspire to be a trainer for trainers or a teacher for teachers. How did you end up on that path?
Well, I think when this exploded, when the method exploded in about late 90s, early 2000, I'd been teaching for 20 years. So what I'd learned along the way, in 10 years in Texas, when I was in LA, I worked at a place called Studio C, as well as a lot of private clients. I helped Maury Windsor set up a studio. So I kind of had that whole experience behind me. I also wrote, my first book was called Pure Pilates. And that definitely helped because it got translated into most languages. So a lot of people started contacting me from Russia to different countries because of the book. And also the conventions, Body, Mind, Spirit, when I was presenting there, people would be coming in from different countries. And so I got invited to go first to start, teaching.
Right.
We set up the training school because we've been training teachers for a long time, but nothing, much more kind of apprenticeship system. When I had teachers in Houston, we taught them on apprenticeship. We didn't have official courses. But during my time of the 80s, I absolutely loved aerobics. And I was there with Jane Fonda, jumping up and down all of the 80s, as much
Very
as
cool.
and most of the 90s, actually. And I was involved with an organization called AFA. And then AFA taught me how to be a certification specialist. I had a lot of background in putting courses together with them. And so when I moved back to Europe and we started doing teacher training for Pilates, I just used my background of what we've been working with the other organizations on how to train teachers and how to assess teachers, because that's what is equally as important.
Yes.
And that's why the government came to us, because of the way we were assessing teachers. We weren't asking them to perform the movements, we were testing teaching skills. So it became kind of a natural thing. So I don't know, it just seemed to be organic, if you want to use that word. That it was a natural progression from what I did with the fitness and with aerobics into the teaching the Pilates teachers.
Yes. I've asked a friend of mine who is in social work for a really, really long time. He just retired, 40 years working with youth at risk. I said to him, how did you become the authority, or how did you become the guru on youth culture? And he said, I don't consider myself a guru. I've just been doing this for a really, 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 really long time.
That's what it's about, totally. I mean, we always say when you get a Lifetime Achievement Award, it means stop.
Oh, no. Right.
Because you've been doing it too long. It's like, don't come back. Here's your Lifetime Achievement Award. Don't come back.
Run along.
Course, I just ignore that and just keep going on. I've had 3 Lifetime Achievement Awards, and I'm like,
Oh, nice.
I'm not finished. I'm just starting. This is, I don't see myself as finished. But it's when you're looking at people like Lolita San Miguel and Mary Bowen, who both I adore and worship, they're in their 80s.
Yes.
And they're just, and Lolita is still, steaming ahead with her program. So I think, I always say that I'm going to invent a home for retired Pilates teachers where we can go sit around and talk about whether we should breathe in or breathe out. Because we don't really stop. We just keep going,
Right. Yeah.
Those lifetime achievements don't mean anything to me. I'm not going to stop.
Wow. That's hilarious.
Just
So what, how much have you worked with Mary Bowen? I'd love to have a conversation with her at some point, simply because, like I said, my background is in counseling. So I've read about her, Bowen theories in terms of counseling, and then found out after the fact that she's in Pilates as well. So that was like a double thing for me.
I guess I've met Mary. I used to come to New York every year. We had ECA convention at Times Square, which I loved that convention because it was the best time it was the winter, sales were on, it was the best shopping. We got to come to New York every year. And I met Mary several times at that convention. She was, I actually remember the first time I met her on a round table together. And she turned to me and she went, "I've never heard of you." Now, many people have said this to me over the years. They come up to me, usually at the US conventions, with the inner idea conventions, there used to be an idea. They would come up and say, "I've never heard of you." And I would always say, "Well, I've never heard of you. But now we know each other. Let's start from there."
Let's start there. Yes.
Yeah. And Mary, and so we got talking, and we stayed in touch. And usually each year we come to New York with a group of teachers. We go to Rolati's on 8th Avenue with Roberta there, and we normally have some event. This year, obviously, what are we? 2020. It's all getting blurred in my head. No, we just did it. We were just in New York just before everything kicked off, and we brought a group of teachers there. And normally at those events, Mary comes and gives us a talk and shocks us, as I always say, because her talks are quite educational on the original Being a Client with Joseph Pilates.
Yes.
But I'm sure she will be a guest. I mean, she loves almost as much as me talking. And so I'm sure she would absolutely come onto you and talk with you.
Yeah, that'd be fascinating for me. I'd eat that up. Much like this, this is absolutely fascinating for me just to hear these stories and to learn. And one of the comments that were in your article that you sent to me was a line that Kathy Grant said, which I'm still kind of chuckling about if you say that you know Pilates, then stop.
Yeah. And that's why, I say, if somebody says they're an expert, if somebody says they know everything, run. Run as fast as you can out the door, because none of us know any. All of us know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. I find it lovely because it's what we don't know that's more exciting than what we know.
Absolutely.
There's a lot out there we don't know yet. And we've been lucky. I've been hosting the weekly talks as well since lockdown. And we've had amazing people on there, from Chinese medicine to spine health to marketing. And they've been very different. I mean, one of the gentlemen we had on, Julian Baker, is British. He was doing dissection while listening to Kylie Minogue music. Which I'd never be on a Friday night listening to Kylie Minogue while working out with a dead body, because I've never quite got that dissection. I don't want to do it. I'm not even interested in it. It fascinates me. Many of my friends do it. They love the dissection. I'm like, not for me. But what they've all said, these experts, are movement is the most important thing. And the one thing that's come out of lockdown, we've been going through this pandemic, is that there's amazing people out there doing work right now. I mean, great people. Eric Franklin, who's amazing. Jonathan De Silva, who's got this method called Garuda. Amazing method. I mean, it's just exploring movement outside of Pilates.
Yes.
And I think that's what we have to look for. I mean, we had John Steele on, and John Steele was one of our guests. He was one of the original clients in the original studio, and he said it was very relaxed. He said in the original studio, it was really Romana militarized everything. She turned out everything, and it was really became very strict after that. But he said in the original studio, it was a very creative space. There weren't that many movements. Romana added so many, and you can see any of these talks on our website, and they're all free. You just log in and see them all. But he said that it was, and things which I didn't even know. I mean, I always thought that kind of there was a handover to Romana when Joseph Pilates, wanted to stop teaching, but he died, and she was still living in Peru. And when she came back, they begged her to take over the studio. She said no first, and then eventually she said, yes, I'll take over the studio. But and that was because Clara was not well. So there's things I'm still learning about, the history. But the one thing that I've learned is that it was creative. That somebody came to the studio, he invented a piece of equipment. The breathing, the foot corrector.
Yes.
All these things came out of creativity. And I think that's what we have to hang on to. Yes, it was a system, an amazing system, but he didn't wake up one morning doing the 100. There was a whole evolution to get to that point. And I think a lot of people live in this, what would Joseph Pilates do if he was alive? Now, we don't know. We really don't know. We know what he did. And if you look at that journey, he explored movement. So when I see people like Eric Franklin and James De Silva doing these amazing things, really amazing. And the fascia guys, things that are coming out, we had no idea about fascia. I didn't learn fascia when I was learning to teach Pilates. But it's kind of changed the way we look at movement. So I think we have to stay open and not fix ourselves into a box, and stay open, ready to change if something comes along.
Absolutely. And that's the gentleman I had on yesterday, John McCady, was saying that same thing. And his workshops are on where Pilates meets exercise science. And the conversation was fascinating, because he said the best thing that Pilates instructors can do for their practice is not take another Pilates workshop. Go take a fascial workshop, go learn Franklin method, go learn something else. And he wasn't saying never take Pilates again, but his point in his kind of shocking way was build your toolbox, add more tools to it, expand your lens, and broaden your conversation when it comes to Pilates.
Totally. And I think, I was watching, there was Jay Grimes who did a talk with Balanced Body. He made me laugh. He said, Pilates teachers talk too much. They should talk less. And it was funny because in August, we did our August challenge we do every year, where we do different things for the month. And one of the weeks we do a different mind-body program each day. And when we did our Tai Chi class, the Tai Chi teacher did not speak at all. And it was really weird for the beginning, because I was thinking, he's not talking, he's not saying anything. We were just following. And after a while, it got really interesting just not to talk. So I think we have to talk. I mean, when I've got clients coming in not knowing how to stand up, I can't just expect them to do it. And this is where I kind of differ with James De Silva in some way, some of these guys, because they say that don't teach neutral. There should not be a neutral training. And I'm like, well, if you've got somebody that's standing bad, how do they know how to stand correct? There has to be a framework with that. But I think what we learned about the Qigong, about the mind, about the Tai Chi, about the yoga, because that's kind of like, it's almost like a swear word to some Pilates teachers. And yoga is an amazing method. Well, all the yogas are amazing methods, but they give you something different to Pilates. And without doubt, I teach bar class. I've got a bar class. I teach online. We have a bar program. I love it. It's not the fitness bar that I've seen a lot of places. It's, from my dance background, it's more of a ballet bar. But it changed. When I do that, I get an opportunity to get off the mat and literally do my Pilates upright. And I think that's what I think other movements can give you, is the opportunity to, not just learn your Pilates, but use your Pilates, whether you're walking down the street or whether you're doing bar or whether you're doing gym.
Well said.
Think about your alignment, think about your breathing. So I think that's why we should all do other movements. And as I say, it was a fun week trying different methods.
Absolutely. When you're talking about Joseph Pilates and his death, and then Romana and the handoff in terms of it not looking the way that we thought, or kind of folklore tells us, that makes me think of Bruce Lee. And, with his, I don't know very much about him. I don't know if you do, but from what I understand of him, writing down every philosophical, thing he had learned and recording everything and leaving this actual legacy, handing it off to the next person. And I hear, in terms of movement icons, you know, Joseph Plyce and Bruce Lee's names would be in the same sentence.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if you know anything about Bruce Lee. I need to research more about it, but it's that's one of those thoughts that are triggered as you said that in terms of handing off your philosophy and method and learning.
Yeah, I think, I think I do know something about Bruce Lee. I just can't remember it right now. I think there are stories about, about him out there. I mean, I think all these people that have influenced us, I mean, even, Martha Graham, I mean, all these, and, apparently there wasn't a good relationship between Joseph Pilates and Martha Graham, according to Ron Fletcher. But, I mean, she changed dance, as we know it. And I think these influences on our bodies, as we should say, have been epic. And I think the legacy goes on. I mean, Kathy Grant is, there's Blossom, there's these people who are continuing with Ron Fletcher, continue the Fletcher method. There's people continuing seeing their legacy. And I like calling them legacy methods because they're really variations.
Yes.
And with respect, I mean, they're great methods, great variations. Mm-hmm. And, we all, reflections of who we've learned with. I thought when I first learned with Alan Herdman, I thought I knew everything. And it wasn't until I went to New York, I was like, hang on a minute, all this stuff I don't know. Then that's when you begin to realize that there is so much out there. And I think, a lot of the equipment companies only want you to train with them. And I think that's, because they want you to stay with them and buy the equipment and all that good stuff. And that's the commercial side. But I think when you start branching out away from who you've trained with, fully trained, get comprehensive trained, absolutely, otherwise it's going to be confusing. Otherwise, we have what we call our Pilates butterflies, where they'll do a little bit with this company, a little bit with that company, and they're kind of hopping around. I think, train with whoever you want to train with, 100%. But then your journey starts. When you stop that, then start exploring. Then go try other schools or other teachers and be a client with a teacher.
Absolutely.
Because that's how, I remember Ron Fletcher, who would never let you write anything down. You had to learn everything with your body. In fact, at the Body Mind Convention, I saw him throw people out of the room for writing something down.
Wow, hardcore.
Get out my class. He said, you learn it with your body. You learn it with your body, not with a pen and paper.
Yes.
There's some very strict teachers out there still. And there's some teachers who are a little bit more relaxed. You get attracted to a teacher because of often personality. But I think when you have to step past that and say, okay, beyond their personality, what are they going to offer me? What do they know that they can share with me? And it could be cueing, it could be different ways of saying the same thing. Because I think that's what I've been doing for 40 odd years, is just saying the same thing in different ways. And finding different ways of saying it. So, I think we need to respect, which is a missing word at the moment. We need to respect each other and recognize that we can learn from each other. And even those people who have done short courses, I would never dismiss them. I would never talk down to them. I would try and encourage them to see what they've done is very limited. But I think, we have to have respect with each other. And even though we have differences, and embrace the differences, not fight the differences, as I see going on in Facebook groups so much.
So true. I love your celebration of differences. Like, that is so key. And in a world where we have this allegiance to, like you say, a legacy teacher or a certain way of teaching, when you say stuff like that, Michael, just like learn things from different people, understand what you need to learn from them, that gives us permission to really, get on this search for knowledge, as opposed to a search for affiliation with a certain person, to say, I'm classically trained, I'm trained by this person, I'm part of this lineage, this person taught me, I'm part of this. We start to do that, and we just cling to one person's philosophy instead of truly seeking out movement and understanding and just getting as knowledgeable as possible.
Yeah, our mission statement as a company is let us find your uniqueness. We believe that everyone coming to us, we want you to learn our system first, but then it's absolute nature is that once you've learned and you start teaching, you go away and start embracing who you are. And some people want to work very much in a fitness environment. Some people want to work more on a post-rehabilitation level. you've got different personalities who want to go further. Many of our Pilates teachers who came from fitness went on to train to become a physical therapist. So
right.
we're all on different journeys. It's not a strict roadmap that you have to follow this. You decide which way you're going to go on.
Right.
I've had mat teachers coming to me saying, I'll never have a studio equipment studio or apparatus studio. And of course, what happens is they open one, and I'm like, right. You said never say never, so you don't know what's ahead. We don't know ahead at the moment. I mean, we're not allowed to have clients at the moment, so everything we're doing is online, so we're dealing with that at the moment. And we hope that when we can, we'll have clients again. So I think what this pandemic's taught us is you have to be flexible. You have to learn to adapt. You can't just lay on the floor crying, get up and start thinking about what you can do, not what you can't do.
What you can't do, right, exactly. And when you're talking about the learning, it's almost like getting your driver's license, right? Like if I get my comprehensive course from whomever, that's my ticket, that's my license that shows I'm allowed to safely operate a vehicle. But that doesn't mean that I'm Lewis Hamilton and I can get into Formula One now. I still have more training to do to get that level of expertise and understanding, but I'm safe to operate a vehicle at this point.
Totally. I mean, you might, not that you want to drive a truck, but if you see those big trucks on the freeway and you think, oh God, how do they ever learn to drive those? I mean, you don't know what's ahead. It is part of instinctive is that as humans, we are curious. We want to embrace. We want to learn. And I think it's so easy to be blinkered. And I think that's where I think sometimes some of the more commercial companies or some of the teachers don't want their teachers to step outside because they don't want them to see there's other options. And it's like going to university. If you go to university and you're told only to read one book, and that's the only book you should read, I would question it. So anyone that says I'm the only one that knows, then I question that.
Exactly. And at the same time, the university doesn't say, don't go learn somewhere else after us.
No.
You could only say that you graduated from the University of Waterloo. Like my university didn't say that to me. They sent you off into the abyss of life, right? I mean, but that's what happens in the Pilates world sometimes is that, okay, you taught for me, you have to do your CECs with me, you have to do your workshops with me because you are saying that if you're going to say you graduate from this program, you have to give me all the credit for what you learned. Yeah. And that's...
Yeah, I think you should respect. I mean, the one thing I learned with the dance is, when we have different dance teachers, you learn to respect who you trained with. And I think always have the greatest respect. Never forget where you've come from. And even though you might take a completely different direction in your life, those initial people that introduced you to Pilates or were your first teachers, you have to, that's the ones that, got you excited about it. Yeah, and I think that's the one thing is have, again, that respect for everyone that can give you something.
Yes. Yes. Here's a comment here. It's like getting your first degree black belt. Comprehensive is just the beginning. Never stop learning. Absolutely. And when you said that at the beginning, about the way that we learn, one of my friends says that he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. I think he just got his black belt. And when I was like, wow, that's great, his response was, yes, but I'm a white belt forever.
I love it. Totally. Absolutely. I mean, what a good attitude, and we should all have that. I think people say to me, don't you get tired of teaching Pilates? You've been doing it for so long. I said, no, I physically get tired. I don't get bored. I get because every client comes in is different. So they bring with me a different challenge. If I look at every client differently and thinking, okay, what am I going to do here? How am I going to talk to the client? Recognizing the learning styles, all those kind of differences, who connecting to the client and that not being talking at them. What we're passionate about is being inclusive in your teaching, not being directive, we don't believe in clicking fingers and telling clients, because it's easy for the clients. If you direct the client so much, then the client gets lazy. And what we learned about the original studio, you got to teach it for 5 sessions, and then after that, you had to know it. Today, clients coming in, it's still not wanting you to breathe for them, telling them when to lift up one leg, what springs to use, it's like, come on, if you're going to be a client, you've got to learn your Pilates. Yes. And so I think we just have to recognize as a teacher, you know, that sometimes to step back and reflect on what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Yes.
And it's interesting. One of the things that's happened over lockdown, I'd run it before, but it's become very successful, is I run a bridging course online. So we go through our style of Pilates, and teachers come from everywhere, from every school they've been coming. And it's really a reflection. You know, it's not to say we're better. It's a chance where we can come in together, talk about things. I present how we look at clients and how we assess clients' movements. And but the most important thing I think that comes out of it is that all the teachers have told me is that it's a good opportunity to really reflect on what we are saying and what we are doing.
Yes. That's Socrates said, the only thing I know is that I know nothing, and he knew quite a bit. Right.
Totally.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I can imagine coming out of your bridge program that people are able to formulate their philosophy of teaching based on their cumulative knowledge to that point. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone comes, I mean, it's only 4 people who are fully trained. So everyone comes on usually with experience. And what I normally find is normally people have got habits. You know, they've got their way of doing things. And all I do is kind of rattle the cage and say, look, let's think about this. Maybe there's another approach that we can look at. So, and with all the schools, of course, it's difficult when people have come from shorter courses because they've got less experience. And it's kind of really highlighted sometimes to me. I don't know all training courses. I don't know what they include in what syllabus is on every training course in the world. But sometimes it becomes very clear that it's not looking at different ways of doing the Pilates. It's not looking at group class versus small group or, you know, personal training. So yeah, it's kind of been very interesting. As I said, we've got teachers from all over the world joining, and it's kind of fun to see people in Mexico or in South Africa or India, you know, how they're using their Pilates.
That sounds so fun. In our final 6 minutes that I have left, one of my favorite questions to ask is, who is your ideal client? Who is that person that if they walked in, you'd be like, yes, I can train you for free the rest of my life because it'll be so fun because you're so curious, or you're so strong, or you're so this, or you're so that. Like, who is that person for you?
For me, my favorite client is a client who's never exercised.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They come in, they've got no preconception about what they're going to feel. Again, if they've got some life experience under the belt, even better, because they begin to realize the body is not going to keep doing what it did when they were younger. I like clients to have a detachment from their cell phone and not have that next to me. But you know, after years of teaching professionals, you know, professional dancers, sports people, you know, it's a different thing. When you go in for professionals, they don't want to work out. Their profession's their workout. You know, but it's a different mindset, and they are perfect clients because they do exactly what you want because they know that they're there for a specific reason. The hardest clients is people that come in from fitness that like to go fast and hard. You know, they just want to feel it. They're the hardest clients because you almost have to sell it to them that they can't do something. I can normally make any grown man cry in 5 movements. You know, if people come in and shake my hand and say, I'm strong, which they've done, you know, and I said, well, I'm Michael. And I always say, well, let's see where you're strong. Because I always say, my job is to find the muscles you're not using. You know, all of us, when we get out of bed every day, we use our body in some way through the day as we do it. Over time, that builds up muscle patterns. So, you know, if you're a runner, if you're a triathlete, whatever you're doing, there's still muscles you're not using. So that's why I can find those muscles quite quickly now. Over the years, it's something, you know, you kind of just, from the way they're standing and moving. So really, the perfect client is somebody that's done nothing because they're like fresh putty. You know, they come in, they do exactly what you want. They've got no preconception about what they should be feeling, you know, and it's easier. It's much easier to imprint, you know, the Pilates method into their body. When they're pre-trained with other modalities, it's going to be a little bit rolling their sleeves. It's going to be a rough one.
Well, it's like a golfer walking in, right? And you have to unteach them their swing before you can teach them the new movement pattern. And it's extra work.
Well, Tiger Woods changed golf and exercise. I used to work with Nike quite a lot up in Portland, and we did several world tours with Nike on going to different, again, countries, missionary type things. But the traditional golfer, thought fitness would tighten their body.
Right.
And when he came in, Tiger, although he was known for other things, but he really changed the industry with how golfers looked at movement.
Yes, their physique.
And specific when it came to Pilates. You know, they came in wanting to learn it rather than coming in when they were injured, which is usually how we got the golfers back before Tiger.
Right. Fascinating. That was the fastest 57 minutes. I could listen to your stories all day, Michael.
Well, I've got enough. I've got enough stories. Maybe I should do another session.
We should definitely do another session. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to replay this and just listen to it again and again and again, celebrating differences, highlighting what we can do as opposed to what we can't do. And there's so many nuggets in there. And I appreciate everyone who's been watching and all the comments here. Yeah, thank you so much, Michael.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. And it's great. I think you're doing a great job. I think what you're doing is spreading the word, bringing people together. And we need more of that. And if there's one thing that's come out of this pandemic, as I say, it's our connecting online and having time to connect online and sharing it. So again, thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. And thank you, Roxy, for connecting us.
Yes. Roxy, the amazing woman, Roxy. And if you want to take class with me, I'm online every day. That's any information. Check me out on our website, MK Pilates, and check out my bar class. If you're a dancer in the background, you might like a little bit of bar with me. So I hope to see you.
Perfect.